Australian sport prediction. This video is going out a bit early today as the cricket starts at 12, and that's the first thing I'll be predicting. The test match between India and Australia. It's the first test match. It's over there in India. We've never won there before. We've never won a full series before. But I think this is different. I think our firing power is much stronger than theirs. Virat Kohli has really struggled getting off as of late, and I think we'll win the first test, and I don't think we'll lose any other ones. I think we might draw a few, but definitely we'll win every single. Or we won't drop a game. I think we'll win every single one or draw. We won't lose. I think that if we can, get out their openers, will be a very strong start. Virat Kohli hasn't scored a century in a very long time, or 50. He's been struggling at the end there. So I really do think that we can take advantage of the runs with our great batting and really attack those fast and spinning pitches with our spinners we brought, and our pace is just one of the untouched and unmatched. I think a key players for us this series and this game is Marnus Labuschagne. I think his batting will go a long way. I don't think the openers will do too well. I don't think Warner or Khawaja will play very well in this. I could be wrong with Khawaja. We've seen him play pretty well with pace, but I think Smith and Labuschagne is our main guys here. Cameron Green has a big role if he can go up from what he performed like in Australia's test against South Africa. If he can do any bit of that, I really think that we can go a long way winning this and winning it very comfortably. If we go to the NBL, both the matches are tomorrow. Both of the known matches are tomorrow. It's the play-in matches. Basically, win, go home, or win, go lose, you versus the team that wins first. I'll go through the first match, Southeast Melbourne versus Perth Wildcats. I got an upset here. I think Wildcats get this done. You seen last week, Wildcats had to win by 11 plus. They did that against Sydney, one of the best teams. I realised they didn't have main majority of their players and their starters, but they were still very much trying to win this game, making sure Perth don't get in the finals, but they weren't able to, and they were actually lost by more than 11, which was a blowout, especially for a team that was really trying to push to make sure Perth didn't see the day of light of the finals. But then if you look at Southeast Melbourne, you've got a lot of players in there. Mitch Creek obviously playing pretty well, and then their point guard is pretty efficient as well. But you look at Wildcats, just so many firing power. Luke Travis is playing really well basketball. Bryce Cotton played one bad game against the Sydney Kings, and I expect him to bounce back. I think he ended up shooting one of the last 14 shots that he put up, 19 shots that he put up last match. But I do think that this one will be a redemption match, and he'll come back firing power, very strong, and he will take the charge and leading. And they'll win this by probably 8 and 10 plus. I do think it could be a blowout, even though it is an away game. I think they play better on the road than they play at home anyway, so I think playing away kind of helps them out here. Go to the second game, Cairns versus Tasmania. This should be a pretty easy match for Cairns. They're just a better team. The Taipans have very strong firing power. They've got so much size in the paint, and they've got pretty good ball movement and ball passing and good scoring too. They're a very young side, but they're a very exciting side too, so they'll be able to push the pressure and push the offensive style. They can also defend pretty well, but Tasmania is known for that defense as well, so they could shut down this offense and just really get it pushing, can really push them to the end. I think this will be a close one. I think Taipans take it out though, probably by 4 or 5 points. Let's move over to the NRL, the Rugby League. Now, the first week of preseason, no one really cares about the results, but I'll go quickly through who I think will win each preseason match. We've got the first preseason game, which is tomorrow as well. We got Western Tigers versus New Zealand Warriors. Now, this is interesting. Both teams are pretty weak sides. That obviously, first thing I'll say before I go through any of this is all the rookie list and teams that we'll be playing through the preseason, except for the All-Star match that's happening. That's the only time we'll see any stars play this weekend. So we'll see what happens. We might see a bit of stars glimpse out of the preseason, but they won't play meaningful minutes anyway. Well, not to be expected to play meaningful minutes is mainly for the rookies. So then I'll go through. New Zealand Warriors don't have as many good rookies as many of the competition, but they do have better rookies than the Western Tigers. Western Tigers have a pretty good starting team, better than last year. I wouldn't say better good. I still think they're out of the top 8, but I think they're better than a lot of people give them credit for. But the rookies aren't up to scratch. They've never been good at recruiting in terms of young and youth. But yeah, so I think this will be Probably New Zealand. I think New Zealand wins this game. Yeah, I think they win by a couple tries. Probably I'd say 12, 13 plus. They win this game. If we go over to Friday, you got Newcastle Knights versus Cronulla Sharks. Sorry. So you got Newcastle as the favourite here, but the Sharks could pull something off here. They've got a lot of people that want to prove and break into the starting lineup. For a team that'll be very competitive when they come to the finals. And Newcastle Knights are already a young team as is, and you're going even younger in the preseason match anyway, in the simulation match. So I do think this will be a bit of an upset in terms of preseason. I think the Sharks get this done by a close margin, 6-8. Then we go over to the Rabbitohs versus the Manly game. Look, the Rabbitohs got so much firepower in terms of rookies and people that are really trying to break into the list that won't get a game as they're just a star-studded lineup as it is. I think that they win very comfortably. I think they win by probably four or five tries. I think they absolutely demolish the Sea Eagles here. If we go over to the All-Star match, we got the women's game first. The Maoris versus the Indigenous group. I'm a big supporter of the Indigenous boys and girls, but I don't see the Indigenous girls getting this one done. I think the Maoris girls get this pretty comfortably. They've just got so much firepower. They had a lot of girls that are just way better, and they got such a strong front row. And it's different game the women's is to the men's side. It's the women's can really push the pressure and the pace in the middle and at the front, but they don't really push out the wide of the wing. So there's not really much pace that goes into the women's game. It's a lot more strength that turns into scoring for the women's. So it's very, very different. It's less skill, more strength, and running it straight than it is in the men's league when it comes to rugby league. So I think because of the bigger bodies and the more talented ball holders, a lot of Indigenous girls that are listed have one of the most drop error rates in the league. They really are not very skillful in terms of, they are very quick. So if they can get to the wing and stick the passes, I think they can push them in terms of scoring. But I do think the Maoris get this one done for the women's. If we go to the men's game, now this is the big game here. Now I think the Indigenous All-Stars absolutely murder the Maoris. It's a completely different game in terms of the women's match. That they can just slow them down in the front rowers terms, and they can't get out in the middle on the centres. I don't really see them going wide too often, as the Kiwi boys don't really like to do. They don't like to pass it. Offloads, they're not really known for too much, so I don't expect to see very much. But the flashiness of the All-Stars and just the quickness they have and the skillful players like Latrell and Cobbo on the left or the right will be too much to stop. I think they win by pretty comfortably. I'd say maybe a try or two, so I'll say 12 points, 12 plus points. We go to Penrith versus Parramatta. The grand final rematch in preseason match. Now this is probably be the most even. I see it being extremely even. I do think Parramatta are not as good as the Penrith Panthers in terms of the rookies and the ones listed to play this game. So I think Penrith gets this done in, let's say, a try. Let's say 6 to 10 points. I think they beat Parramatta with, just because of the sheer firepower they have. Especially being the grand finalist. Parramatta probably shouldn't have been there. So I do think Penrith gets this one done. We go to the last game on the Saturday night. We got St. George Dragons versus St. Helens, the grand finalist from the Super League. Now, I've watched a lot of the Super League, the English Super League, the English Rugby League last year. And I watched a lot of these boys that play, and they're pretty good in terms of themselves. But then we got to see a lot of those players, or a lot of these players in those teams were not from England as it was. And a lot of them came back over here this year anyway to play for different teams. So they got culled in the sense of that. And you look at the British players they already had, we got to see a glimpse of in the Rugby World Cup. We never got to see them versus Australia, but they did lose to Samoa. So they did lose to Samoa. Actually, I think it was Tonga they lost to, which Australia then demolished in the final. So I don't think they will have much to match up against, even in terms of them being a pretty senior side versus a rookie side in the Dragons. But I do think the Dragons, they're those young boys they got is much more talented, and they're playing in a bigger, more comfortable league, and they wouldn't want to lose this game. I think this game will be the most competitive one. Both teams have a lot to prove here. One team's like, I'm not going to be losing because I'm in a higher, more competitive league. I think this is the game to watch. If you're going to watch any NRL game, you should watch this Dragons versus the St. Helens game. This will be the most competitive game of the round. We go over to Sunday. The Storm versus the Roosters. Now, I think the Roosters are going to play a pretty strong side here. I think they really want to test in some minutes with Brendan Smith that I heard on rumours, but I'm not sure anyway. I know they want to test some things out with the senior boys, so I think they can get out and play a very fast pace. Let them play 5 to 15 minutes maybe. They get to a pretty high lead, take them off and let the rookies play, and then they'll comfortably win this one. So I've got the Roosters over the Storm here. Got the Raiders versus the Bulldogs. Now, this is probably extremely even, but as a lot of years come, Raiders tend to really try and put the pressure on in the preseason matches. So I think the Raiders get this one done. I do think that they really take pride in being a pretty good preseason team, and they probably in history take it the most serious out of any other club. So I do think they win this game here. We move over to the other game, North Queensland Cowboys versus the Dolphins. Now, this is the first time we're going to see the Dolphins play ever, and that's pretty interesting. And I think they'll win this game. I think they're based off that we've not seen many of these players play. They've recruited different codes. They've recruited people that union boys over, very young, youthful talents as well to play. And I think a lot of the boys will play this game too. So I think they'll have a lot to prove and show, especially their first outing on the NRL spotlight. So I think they win. I think they beat the Cowboys. I don't think the Cowboys are taking much pressure. I knew they were one of the favourites to win the whole preseason challenge 100,000 comp thing until the fixtures released, where they didn't announce that a lot of their starters will even be glimpsed in, or even a lot of their secondary won't even be playing. They'll be playing a lot of boys that we will never really even see in their second team. So I think the Dolphins win this game. We go over to the Brisbane Broncos versus the Gold Coast Titans. This one can go either way. I think Brisbane wins this. I think Brisbane wins this pretty close. I think Gold Coast will be struggling to keep up with pace. And the Gold Coast don't really like to win anyway. That's it for the Australian sporting prediction that I got this week. I'll probably give you my team to win the whole preseason match as well, because I said that Australia was going to win the Test series. So I'll tell you, I really think the Rabbitohs wins the preseason challenge. I think they like to score. They've named the more talented list, and because of the whole new rules and stuff when it comes to like five extra points everywhere, extra points if you score 5, extra point for the line breaks, and they've got the most talented and experienced side going into it. In terms of people that have even played in the super, like in a final as well, in the NRL Grand Final, like they're playing in this match and they'll play full minutes too because they're not going to be playing this year. So yeah, I really think they can push and they'll win this one. They'll win the $100,000, and then yeah, that'll be it. That's my prediction for the Australian weekend, which is this weekend, the Australian sports that we've got going on over here. Thank you for watching. Please like, subscribe, and share with all your friends. And yeah, thank you for watching my prediction video. Australia.